Now, before we start putting our cubes in that'll represent our ceiling tiles, let's go back and take a look at what's going on inside of Revit. So I'm going to just close this off for a second. And you'll notice nothing's showing on the screen. And actually, I'm going to go to a 3D view here. And this is really important when we get started because this has to do with the settings that we have set up in Dynamo. I'm going to go back now to Dynamo. And this is where we talk a little bit about our details up here. If I go to View, and I go to Background 3D Preview, I want to go to Available Previews, and then make sure that we have a preview inside of Revit. So make sure that gets selected. And then once again, if I close this down now, you'll see we have a series of points inside of Revit. I suspect that if you missed the video, I'll get tons of questions on that. So if you're not seeing the blue dots, rewind the tape and watch that a little more closely. So let's go now to that front elevation or the south elevation and look at where our blue dots are. Our blue dots are automatically at level 0, 0 feet, level 1. And we're going to have another level, and I'm going to just change this right away because 10 feet is kind of short for a grand ceiling. So I'm going to just move this up to 20 feet and jump back to Dynamo. And now we're going to look at how we can modify that ceiling height. Now I get this little hand showing up that's really kind of annoying. Anytime you click anywhere else, it'll turn back to an arrow. I'm not sure if that's why I have that glitch. It always a little bit of a mystery to me. So let's just go ahead now and use our number slider. I'm going to right click on this and rename it. So I right click and I get the rename function. And I'm going to call this ceiling height. It's still a number slider. I've just changed the name of it. And that's really an important kind of concept because that allows you now to understand what that functionality is. We want that to be a slider to change ceiling height, but if it just said number slider, we'd have no idea what it was actually changing. So that just helps to give us a little bit of reference, especially when we look back on our files. Now remember, this has its default settings. It was going from 0 to 100. That's way more than we want. So I'm going to actually click on the little blue caret here. And let's say we want our ceiling height to go to a maximum of 20. And we want it to adjust in increments of 1 feet. So now I can set that. I'll close that back off again. And now if we move the slider, you see we get an indication of any level from 0 to 20 feet. And we're going to plug that right into our Z. And I'm going to go ahead and slide this. And you'll notice now how our ceiling, our theoretical ceiling plane is moving up. And we'll leave it at 20 because that's where we created that that level inside of Revit. I'll close off the Dynamo document, and you can see here that we now have our blue dots up at level 20. So now we can control where these things are actually positioned with inside of our Revit document. So back to Dynamo now, and once again, let's just rotate this around a little bit. I'm going to use the orbit tool so we can look at these kind of dots, and I'll just zoom out a little bit, and then I'll click back to the node tool. And what we want to do now is put that kind of a ceiling tile or those boxes there. And that is a piece of geometry. It's a solid, I believe. And it is a cuboid. Cuboid being a box. And the way we want to do this is we want to use the origin, width, and length. Now look at how confusing this can be. We have a thing that's called coordinate system with origins, widths, and lengths. But the coordinate system is where we would get into trouble because we haven't defined that. What we want to use is just the term origin, width, length, and height. So I'm going to click that, and that cuboid is going to show up. Once again, I get that my handprint, so I'm just going to click on something that is an open window like this number thing. It'll turn back to an arrow. And we have a cuboid appearing on the screen right here, down at the bottom. And let me see if I can pick a little better elevation here. All right, so that cuboid is sitting down on the ground at 0, 0, 0, just like we did with our first point. And I want to move that up to that origin point, right? And I want to make multiple ones. So first of all, once again, let's review what we're getting with the cuboids by length. The origin is set as a default 0, 0, 0. Its width is 1, 1, height 1. So it's a 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot box. And if we plug in this points, which are each one of these points, if I select these, you'll notice they all turn blue. That's all of these points that are selected. If I push these into the origin, now that cuboid, all of those cuboids appear as the ceiling plane. And now we can go back into our Revit document, and let's go to a 3D view of this, and we have the same thing appearing. Now it starts to get a little busy, and actually let me, I'll just change this view from an orthographic to a perspective. That'll give us maybe a little better visualization of what's going on here. These are just previews. They don't actually exist. They're giving you the outline of the object as it sits inside of Revit, or excuse me, inside of Dynamo. And you'll notice that a lot of information starts to show. We have actually controls over that. If I go back to Dynamo, and I want to get rid of the points. So actually, let me just show you how this works. I'm going to select the cuboid. So I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to turn the preview off. You'll notice we still have the points. And I'm going to right click on these, and I'm going to, turn the preview off for the points. And I'm just going to go back and turn these back on because we really want to show these. So I'll turn the preview back on for those. Now the points aren't showing. And if we go back into Revit, now we no longer have those points indicating. Now that might seem really trivial because there's only a few different kinds of objects here, but once you start creating tons and tons of different components, the scene can get a little busy, and some things you're actually only using for, like the point to get to the center of the cube. The point is no longer useful to you. So with that, next we'll look at creating a B-spline to start to manipulate our cuboids.